Your kind doesn't belong up here." The flight attendant's voice sliced through the cabin loud enough for everyone in first class to hear, sharp enough to draw blood from silence. Conversations died mid-sentence. Coffee cups froze halfway to lips. A woman in a rose-colored dress sat perfectly still, her boarding pass trembling slightly between her fingers. Two security officers stood behind her, uniforms crisp, expressions already set to suspicion. She looked up, calm but unblinking. Her name was Dr. Naomi Ellis, and before this flight left the runway, this moment of arrogance would cost the airline $4.9 billion. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below, and if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we are glad you are here. Now, back to Dr. Ellis. It started like every other morning at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Efficient, rehearsed, impersonal. Naomi had boarded quietly, seat 2 amperes, a one-way ticket to San Francisco. No assistant, no entourage, just confidence folded neatly into every movement. But confidence, for some people, looks like defiance. The moment she sat down, the attendant's eyes had scanned her from hair to heels, searching for a mistake to correct. "Ma'am, this section is for first-class passengers only." Naomi met her gaze. "That is exactly what my ticket says." The attendant smiled, thin and condescending. "I am sure it does. 3 rows back," someone chuckled. Another passenger whispered, "Typical." The word floated through the cabin like a match ready to spark. Then came the order. Short, final, practiced. "Security, please remove her." Naomi did not argue. She stood, slowly, gracefully, the kind of grace that unsettles bullies. One officer reached for her arm. The other cleared his throat, trying to sound official. "Ma'am, you need to come with us." The passengers watched, some recording, most pretending not to. The shame in that cabin did not belong to her, it was theirs. As the officer's hand closed around her wrist, Naomi's phone vibrated once. She lifted it, pressed a single button, and spoke softly into the receiver. "Rachel, initiate the call." A pause, then a quiet reply through the tiny speaker. "Confirmed. Board is live." Naomi turned her head toward the officer. "You might want to let go," she said. He frowned, confused. "Excuse me?" She smiled, small but final. "You are about to escort the woman who owns your airline's biggest investor." The cabin rippled with whispers. The attendant stiffened, but Naomi kept walking, escorted between 2 men who thought they held power. Each step echoed down the jet bridge like a countdown to reckoning. Somewhere behind her, a passenger whispered, "Who is she?" By the time the security doors opened to the terminal, Naomi had already dialed again, her voice steady, controlled. "Rachel, withdraw every cent. 4.9 billion. Effective immediately." Outside, sunlight poured through the glass. Inside, the echo of that first sentence still hung in the air. "Your kind doesn't belong up here." In 30 minutes, the world would know exactly how wrong they were. The terminal was a storm of motion and sound, but Naomi Ellis moved through it like calm water cutting through chaos. The 2 security officers stayed close behind her, guiding her toward a private inspection room near gate A22. Passengers slowed their steps, watching in silence, unsure if they were witnessing a crime or a mistake. Some recorded, others whispered, but Naomi's face remained unreadable. She had built an empire on discipline, real control, not the kind that hides behind uniforms and authority. Inside the small holding room, the fluorescent light was harsh, the air stale. A supervisor in a Navy suit waited by the counter, hands folded, rehearsing an apology he had no intention of meaning. "Dr. Ellis," he began, the title sliding out awkwardly as if it did not belong to her. "We just need to verify your ticket and identification. Standard procedure." "Oh." Naomi placed her phone and boarding pass on the table, her movements precise, deliberate. "Standard procedure would have started before I was dragged from my seat," she said quietly. The supervisor hesitated, glancing at the officers. One of them looked down, guilt flickering for half a second. The other simply stared ahead. From the other end of the phone, a faint voice spoke. Rachel, her assistant, was still on the line through Naomi's earpiece. "The board is connected," she said softly. "We are watching live through the internal security feed." Naomi's eyes never left the supervisor. "Then you may want to adjust your tone," she said. "You are on camera, too." A beat of silence filled the room. The supervisor forced a smile. "Ma'am, there must be some misunderstanding. These things happen." Naomi's reply was razor thin. "No, these things are chosen." Outside the door, footsteps echoed. The sound of authority approached the airline's regional director, a tall man with silver hair and the confidence of someone who thought lawsuits only happened to other people. He entered with a smile that tried to disarm and failed instantly. "Dr. Ellis," he said, "I am sure we can clear this up quickly." Naomi stood, her posture unbroken. "You cleared it up the moment your staff decided who did not belong in first class," she said. "Now you will explain that to the people who fund your airline." The director blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" Naomi held up her phone. On the screen, a video call was open. 10 faces stared back. Executives, investors, board members, all silent witnesses. "They heard everything," she said. "Every word spoken to me on that plane, and they will decide whether this company still deserves its wings." The supervisor swallowed hard. The officer shifted uneasily. The power that had filled the room minutes ago was gone, replaced by a weight heavier than any badge could carry. Naomi reached for her phone, her voice low but final. "Continue the audit, Rachel. I want every employee involved documented by name." Rachel's voice came back calm and sure. "Already in progress." Naomi turned back to the director, her tone unshaken. "You wanted to know who I am? I am the reason your planes still fly." The man said nothing. Outside, through the window, a jet lifted into the gray Atlanta sky, its engines loud, its ascent certain. But inside that small room, another kind of flight had just begun. The door closed behind the regional director with a soft thud that sounded more like defeat than authority. Naomi Ellis remained standing, her phone still in hand, the silent glow of the screen washing her face in calm light. The 2 security officers shifted their weight, no longer sure which side of power they were standing on. One cleared his throat, the sound too loud in the tense air. Naomi broke the silence first. "What were your names again?" Her tone was steady, not sharp, not angry, simply deliberate. The younger officer hesitated before answering. "Officer Reynolds, ma'am." The older one spoke next. "Officer Keller." Naomi nodded once. "Both of you will be included in the internal report. If you acted under orders, you will be fine. If not, I suggest you start writing down everything you remember." The regional director turned back toward her, forcing a strained smile. "Dr. Ellis, this is unnecessary. We all make mistakes." Naomi's voice sliced through the excuse before it finished forming. "You call this a mistake? Dragging a paying passenger out of a seat because she did not fit your picture of first class? That is not a mistake. That is culture." The room felt smaller now. Every word seemed to pull oxygen from the air. Behind Naomi, her phone chimed softly. Rachel's voice came through again, measured and precise. "Corporate legal is on the call, Dr. Ellis. They have confirmed that the footage from the cabin and terminal has been archived in real time." "Good," Naomi replied. "Tell them to prepare a formal report for tomorrow's investor briefing. Make sure they include the recording of that sentence, 'Your kind does not belong up here,' word for word." The regional director's face lost color. "Dr. Ellis, surely you are not going to make this public." Naomi looked directly at him. "Public? You made it public the moment your staff shouted it in front of 30 passengers. Outside the frosted glass, footsteps hurried by whispers, radio clicks, the faint sound of tension rippling through the terminal. News traveled fast in airports, faster than aircraft. A young woman in a blue airline uniform peeked through the glass, her eyes wide. Naomi gestured for her to enter. The woman hesitated, then stepped forward. "Ma'am," she said quietly, "I saw what happened. I was at the gate counter. You had a valid ticket. Everything matched." Naomi met her eyes. "And did you speak up?" The woman swallowed. "I wanted to, but my supervisor told me to stay quiet." Naomi's tone softened, just slightly. "Then you speak now." The woman nodded, turning toward the director. She was cleared. The manifest was accurate. They removed her anyway. "Hi." The regional director exhaled, slow and heavy. "Thank you, Ms. Williams," the woman answered. "Tasha Williams." Naomi looked back at the young employee. "Miss Williams, your honesty will be noted. It matters." Rachel's voice came through again in Naomi's ear. "Dr. Ellis, the press division is requesting a statement." Naomi's reply was firm. "Not yet. Truth does not need a headline. It needs consequences." She turned toward the door. The officers stepped aside without a word. The director tried to speak, but Naomi raised her hand gently. "Save it for the boardroom. That is where this flight will land." Then she walked out, calm as sunrise, leaving behind a silence no one could repair. Outside, a new message vibrated on her screen. Funds transfer in process. The reckoning had officially taken off. The hallway outside the inspection room felt longer than it was, the kind of sterile corridor that swallowed sound and stretched time. Naomi Ellis walked with purpose, the echo of her heels tracing the rhythm of a verdict already decided. Passengers nearby stepped aside instinctively, drawn by the quiet certainty in her stride. The two officers who had once gripped her arms now followed at a cautious distance, unsure whether to guard her or to apologize. At the end of the corridor, the glass doors opened to the main terminal. Conversations paused. Cameras turned. Someone whispered, "That is her, the woman from the plane." The hum of voices built like static, spreading across the concourse in ripples of curiosity and disbelief. Naomi did not slow down. She headed straight toward the airline's executive lounge, the same lounge that had denied her entry just 1 year earlier when an employee mistook her for a cleaning contractor. Inside, the room was bright and quiet, the smell of espresso and expensive silence hanging in the air. 3 executives in tailored suits stood by the window overlooking the runway. One of them, a man named Richard Hale, vice president of operations, recognized her immediately. His polite smile froze halfway. "Dr. Ellis," he said carefully, "we were just informed about an incident on Flight 892. Naomi stopped a few feet from him. "Incident?" she said. "That is one word for it." He cleared his throat. "Please, let us sit down and discuss what happened." Naomi remained standing. "Your employees dragged me off a plane for existing in a seat I paid for. They called security because they could not imagine that someone who looked like me belonged there. So no, Mr. Hale, we will not be sitting down." The other executives exchanged nervous glances. One of them, a woman named Denise Crawford, tried to recover the tone. "Dr. Ellis, we value diversity deeply. This does not represent our company values." Naomi's voice stayed calm but carried weight. "Then your values are decorative. They hang in brochures, not in your behavior." Behind her, the terminal buzzed louder. Phones pointed through the glass walls, capturing fragments of the confrontation. Naomi's phone vibrated again. She answered without looking down. "Rachel?" "Transfer complete," her assistant replied. $4.9 billion withdrawn from the investment account. The board chair just confirmed receipt. Richard Hale's jaw tightened. "You cannot be serious." Naomi looked him in the eye. "I am not in the business of warnings, Mr. Hale. I am in the business of consequences." The words landed like a strike of thunder in a quiet room. Denise's voice faltered. "Dr. Ellis, please, we can resolve this internally." Naomi cut her off. "You already did. You resolved it the moment you told a black woman she did not belong where she had already earned her seat." Silence spread. Every executive avoided her gaze. The reflection in the glass showed a jet taking off outside, its wings slicing through clouds of gray. Naomi watched it for a long moment, then turned back to them. "This company has forgotten what it means to fly," she said softly. "You have altitude without integrity. That ends today." She placed her phone flat on the marble table. A notification flashed. "Corporate board meeting, emergency session commencing in 15 minutes. Naomi stepped closer to the window, her voice low and unwavering. "You called security on me," she said. "Now security will answer to me." "Oh." The room fell silent again, only the distant roar of departing engines remained, like the sound of power being reclaimed. The clock on the lounge wall ticked past 11:15 when the emergency board session began. Naomi Ellis stood by the window, the sunlight casting a clean line across her face. She did not sit, did not blink, only listened as Rachel's voice came through the speakerphone with the precision of a courtroom clerk. "Board members are present and accounted for," she said. "We are now recording." Richard Hale shifted in his seat, his confidence evaporating. "Dr. Ellis," he began, "perhaps we can pause this until we have a full report." Naomi turned slightly, her gaze sharp enough to stop him mid-sentence. "You had a report the moment your staff called security. You had evidence when they shouted that sentence in front of 30 witnesses. The only thing you did not have was respect." Across the line, the board chair's voice carried through, calm but firm. "Dr. Ellis, we are deeply disturbed by what we have seen. The footage from the cabin is clear. We will proceed as you request. Naomi nodded once. Then begin by suspending every employee involved until a full investigation is complete. Effective immediately. Richard swallowed. You cannot do that without legal review. Naomi faced him fully now. I can, because I own the controlling interest of the group that funds your airline, and because legal review began 5 minutes ago. Rachel confirmed from the phone, her tone cool and steady. Terminations have been filed. Compliance has verified the names. Nicole Harris, Brian Foster, and Captain Daniel Pierce. Access credentials revoked, payroll frozen. A stunned silence filled the room. Denise Crawford, the executive who had tried to smooth things over earlier, whispered under her breath, "My God." Naomi heard her and replied softly, "No, just justice." Through the glass walls, curious employees had gathered outside, their reflections blending with the city skyline behind them. Some looked shocked, others relieved. For the first time, whispers in the terminal were not about scandal, they were about accountability. Naomi stepped closer to the table. "Mr. Hale, I asked you once to remember that diversity is not decoration. It is discipline. You ignored me. Now the cost has a number. $4.9 billion withdrawn, 4 careers terminated, and 1 brand under review." Richard tried to stand, but Naomi's voice pinned him in place. "Sit down. You will listen until I finish." He Saturday slowly. Naomi continued, her words measured like a verdict. "I am not your enemy, Mr. Hale. I am the mirror you refuse to face. You built a company that sells inclusion in commercials but practices exclusion in real life. And I will not fund hypocrisy." Rachel's voice entered again. "Dr. Ellis, the press has picked up the story. The headline reads, 'Investor removed from first-class airline faces immediate financial fallout.' It is trending nationally." Denise whispered, "This will destroy us." Naomi's tone remained calm. "No, it will rebuild you, if you are smart enough to learn from it." Outside the window, another plane thundered down the runway, lifting into the bright sky. Naomi watched it rise, her reflection merging with the glass and the clouds beyond. She spoke without turning. "This is not about one flight. This is about every gate, every counter, every uniform that forgets what humanity looks like." Then she turned back to the room, her voice quiet but final. "Today, this airline lands in the truth. From here on, you either ascend with integrity or you never take off again." No one answered. The sound of the departing jet filled the silence, echoing like applause for the kind of power that does not need to raise its voice to change everything. The boardroom silence lasted long after Naomi Ellis finished speaking. The executives sat motionless, eyes darting between each other, trying to gauge the damage. Outside the glass, airport life carried on, families rushing for gates, engines roaring, coffee machines hissing, but inside that room, time felt frozen. Naomi finally turned away from the window, her calm presence cutting through the tension like clean glass through fog. "Rachel," she said into the speakerphone, "have the board circulated the compliance footage to the Public Relations Division?" Rachel's voice came back steady and confident. "Already done, Dr. Ellis. Major networks have requested interviews. Every outlet from New York to Los Angeles is covering the story." Denise Crawford rubbed her forehead, defeated. "We are going to lose everything." Naomi's gaze softened, but only slightly. "Sometimes you have to lose what is rotten to keep what is real." Richard Hale leaned forward, desperate to salvage his composure. "Dr. Ellis, if we issue an immediate apology and compensation offer, perhaps we can contain this." Naomi regarded him for a moment. "Containment is what built this problem. You do not contain discrimination. You confront it." The door opened quietly, and Tasha Williams, the young employee from earlier, entered hesitantly. She held a tablet in her hands. "Ma'am," she said nervously, "security sent over the final audit files. They show the attendant made a false report before verifying your ID." Naomi took the tablet, her tone even. "And the names?" Tasha swallowed. She included her supervisor, and she referenced a prior incident protocol that singled out passengers based on appearance. Naomi looked up. "So it was not random. It was routine." Tasha nodded, eyes down. "Yes, ma'am." The revelation spread through the room like electricity. The board chair's voice came through the speaker again, heavy with dismay. "Dr. Ellis, that finding confirms a pattern. We will recommend immediate federal investigation." Naomi's answer was cold precision. "Make sure it happens. No settlement, no non-disclosure, transparency, or nothing. She handed the tablet back to Tasha. You've done well, Miss Williams. From today, you will report directly to me. We need people who speak up. Tasha's eyes widened. Thank you, Dr. Ellis. Richard leaned forward again, his voice shaking. Dr. Ellis, please, this level of exposure will ruin our public image. Naomi faced him fully. Image is the illusion you sell when truth becomes inconvenient. I am not here for illusion. I am here for reform. Rachel's voice echoed through the line once more. Dr. Ellis, the stock market just reacted. The airline's share value dropped 8% within 30 minutes of the announcement. Naomi did not blink. Let it fall. Integrity weighs more than numbers. She stepped closer to the conference table, her reflection aligning with theirs in the polished surface. For years, you built success on altitude and marketing. Now you will rebuild it on respect. The board chair's tone shifted, quieter, more sincere. Dr. Ellis, what would you have us do first? Naomi's answer came like judgment written in stone. Start by rewriting your policies. Start by training your people to see value before color. And start by remembering that the sky does not care who flies in it. Outside, thunder rolled faintly across the clouds, echoing through the glass. Naomi glanced toward it, a faint smile crossing her lips. That, she said softly, is the sound of change taking off. No one in the room dared to speak. The storm had finally shifted, and it carried her name. By the time the emergency meeting adjourned, the sun had shifted across the terminal glass, painting the floor in long golden lines. Naomi Ellis walked out of the lounge flanked by silence, not security. The same officers who had once gripped her arms now stepped aside and lowered their gaze as she passed. The world outside was already moving, headlines flashing across news tickers, clips from passengers' phones spreading across social media, each caption angrier than the last. She moved through the terminal slowly, every step deliberate, every glance calm. People began to recognize her now. A man in a business suit lowered his phone mid-scroll. A flight attendant whispered to her coworker. A woman with a stroller stopped and simply said, "Thank you." Naomi nodded politely but kept walking. She had not done this for applause. Justice was not theater. It was necessity. At the far end of the concourse, near Gate B14, she stopped by a large window overlooking the runways. Planes lifted into the fading afternoon sky, one after another, engines roaring like distant thunder. Her reflection in the glass merged with the motion outside, steady, determined, unstoppable. Her phone rang again. Rachel's voice came through, clear and composed. Dr. Ellis, the Department of Transportation has issued a statement. They are opening an investigation into the airline's conduct. Naomi's answer was calm. Good. Let truth take the pilot's seat for once. A pause followed. Then Rachel's tone softened. You should know, the public response is overwhelming. Thousands of passengers are posting under the tag number FlyFair. They are sharing their own stories. Naomi turned from the window, eyes narrowing slightly. That is what I wanted to remind them. Their dignity has altitude, too. As she spoke, Tasha Williams approached from behind, still holding the tablet. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice carried strength. Dr. Ellis, I just wanted to say, when you stood up to them, it made me realize I have been silent too long. I will not be silent again. Naomi smiled faintly. Then my work here is already worth something. Is it? The intercom crackled overhead, announcing Flight 892, the very flight that had started it all, now preparing to reboard with a new crew. Naomi looked toward the gate. Through the glass, she could see the new flight attendants greeting passengers with careful smiles. A moment of quiet pride filled her chest, not for revenge, but for correction. Rachel's voice interrupted her thoughts. The board chair is asking whether you intend to restore funding once the corrective measures are complete. Naomi looked out at the horizon, her tone reflective. That depends on what they build next. Money should never buy silence. It should buy change. As she hung up, a small group of journalists rushed down the hall toward her, microphones ready. Naomi raised a hand gently before they could speak. Record this, she said evenly. I am not canceling an airline. I am grounding arrogance. When every passenger, every worker, every voice is treated with equal respect, I will help them fly again. Flashbulbs burst like tiny stars. The reporters shouted questions, but Naomi was already walking away. Behind her, The sound of applause rose from travelers scattered through the terminal, not loud, not planned, but real. It rippled through the space like wind through an open cabin. Outside, another plane took off into the amber sky. Naomi watched it climb, the sunlight catching its wings like a promise. Her voice, quiet but firm, carried into the hum of the airport. "Dignity," she said, "is the only class worth flying." The applause faded into the rhythm of the terminal, but its echo lingered. Naomi Ellis stood by the window for a moment longer, watching the sky soften into evening blue. The storm had broken, but the world outside still buzzed with reaction. Airport monitors flashed breaking headlines. Airline under investigation after CEO investor incident. Her name appeared on every screen, some with admiration, some with controversy. That was fine. Change was never polite. She walked toward the exit, her footsteps steady on the polished floor. Each stride felt lighter now, not because the weight was gone, but because she had finally shifted it onto those who deserved to carry it. As she passed a row of coffee shops, a young man in uniform called out hesitantly, "Dr. Ellis?" She turned. He looked barely 20, his badge reading, "Maintenance Crew." "I saw what happened," he said. "My mother used to work for this airline. She quit after they treated her like she did not belong. What you did, it means something to people like us." Naomi smiled softly. "Then make sure you keep working for something better. Let respect be your inheritance." The young man nodded, eyes shining, and Naomi continued walking. Outside the terminal doors, a black sedan waited. The driver opened the door silently, but Naomi paused before getting in. Across the road, reporters still clustered near the main entrance, cameras ready. One called out, "Dr. Ellis, do you regret pulling $4.9 billion? Some say it will bankrupt them." Naomi faced the crowd, her voice clear above the noise. "Bankruptcy is not the enemy of corruption. It is its cure. If they rebuild, they will rebuild clean." The murmurs quieted. Another reporter shouted, "Do you think this will change how airlines treat black passengers?" Naomi's answer came without hesitation. "It already has. Every company watching today learned that humiliation costs more than equality ever will." The driver opened the door again. Naomi slipped into the car, the city lights beginning to blink alive beyond the glass. Her phone vibrated once more, Rachel's name on the screen. "Dr. Ellis," Rachel said. "The federal investigation team wants to meet you tomorrow morning. They are requesting your testimony." Naomi replied calmly, "Confirm it. The truth does not sleep." Rachel hesitated. "And one more thing. The public has started a petition to have you appointed to the National Aviation Ethics Council." Naomi allowed a small laugh, the first in hours. "Let them sign. If justice wants wings, I will help it fly." The sedan pulled away from the curb, merging into the steady stream of headlights along the interstate. Naomi looked out the window as the airport receded behind her, glowing like a constellation against the night. Inside the car, she finally let her shoulders drop. The adrenaline had faded, replaced by something deeper resolve. She thought of every name she had ever heard, spoken with disbelief at a counter, a gate, a desk. She thought of her parents who had taught her that silence was never safety, only delay. The city skyline appeared ahead, tall and bright against the horizon. Naomi whispered to herself, barely audible, "We did not come this far to fit in. We came this far to stand out." Her phone screen lit again with one new message from Rachel. "Investors reinstating funds under new conditions of equity and reform." Naomi smiled faintly. "Then maybe," she said softly, "this flight is just beginning." As the car moved through the city lights, the hum of the engine blended with the distant roar of departing planes, each one carrying a promise that the sky would never look the same again. Morning light spilled through the city like truth that could not be hidden. Naomi Ellis sat in the back of the sedan, heading toward the Federal Aviation headquarters. Outside, billboards already carried her image, the woman who grounded injustice. She did not smile at them. She never fought for fame. She fought for clarity. When the car stopped, a wave of reporters rushed forward. Cameras flashed, voices shouted questions, but Naomi's pace did not change. Her calm was the kind that silenced noise without saying a word. Inside the marble lobby, agents guided her toward a conference room filled with officials and screens, still looping the viral footage from Flight 892. Director Hayes of the Civil Rights Division rose to greet her. "Dr. Ellis, thank you for meeting with us." The evidence you provided confirms a pattern of profiling across multiple flights. Naomi met her eyes. Then this is not about one airline. It is about a system that confuses power with privilege. Saturday, the cameras clicked on. Please, describe what happened, Hayes asked. Naomi's voice was even measured. They saw a black woman in first class and assumed the seat was wrong. When they called security, they were not enforcing safety, they were enforcing bias. They disguised discrimination as procedure, and I will not let that stand. A murmur rippled through the room. Hayes leaned forward. And what outcome do you expect from this inquiry? Naomi answered without hesitation. I want policy reform written into law. I want mandatory transparency for every airline, and I want apologies replaced by accountability. Her words carried the weight of generations. One official whispered, "She is right." Another nodded quietly. The atmosphere shifted from observation to respect. Hayes closed the folder slowly. We are appointing you as an ethics advisor to the Aviation Committee, effective immediately. Naomi inclined her head. Then let us make justice permanent, not punctual. When she stepped back into the sunlight, reporters shouted her name again. One voice rose above the rest. Dr. Ellis, what will you do next? She paused, her face calm, her tone unwavering. The same thing I have always done, she said. I will fly higher, and I will bring everyone who was told they could not. The crowd went silent. Naomi entered her car once more. Behind her, the building stood tall against the morning sky, a symbol of change that had finally learned her name. That evening, the skyline shimmered against the glass walls of Naomi Ellis's office. The city below pulsed with headlines, but inside, the world felt still. Rachel stood near the window, tablet in hand. Dr. Ellis, she said quietly. The final report from the Department of Transportation just came in. They are naming your case as the foundation for new national anti-discrimination flight policies. Naomi turned from her desk, eyes calm but bright. Good, she said. Then this was not just one woman's humiliation. It became everyone's awakening. Rachel hesitated, her voice softer now. And the airline's board has requested a meeting to discuss reinstating funding. They are promising full structural reform. Naomi walked to the window, the city lights reflecting across her face. They will earn it, she replied. Dignity is never a donation. It must be built. Outside, another plane rose into the sky, its silver wings catching the last light of sunset. Naomi watched it climb, steady and unstoppable. You know, Rachel, she said, for years they called us angry for asking to belong. Now they will call us powerful for never asking again. Rachel smiled faintly. What should I tell them when they call tomorrow? Naomi's gaze stayed on the horizon. Tell them justice flies first. Every time. The office fell quiet. The city moved on below, but somewhere above the clouds, a new standard had already taken off. Naomi Ellis exhaled slowly, her voice low and sure. Let them remember this day, she said. The day prejudice finally paid its fare. Oh. The next morning, sunlight poured across Naomi Ellis's office like a quiet celebration. Her phone buzzed non-stop messages from journalists, thank you notes from passengers, and invitations from advocacy groups across the country. But Naomi ignored the noise. She was already drafting something bigger. Rachel entered, carrying a folder embossed with the seal of the Federal Aviation Council. They have approved your proposal, she said. The new policy will be called the Ellis Amendment. It will require all airlines to record and audit every customer removal based on verified cause, not appearance. Naomi smiled faintly, her voice calm but firm. Names fade. Systems last. If my name helps change one, then it was worth every headline. Rachel paused, her eyes bright. People are saying you did in 24 hours what others have tried to do for decades. Naomi turned toward her. No, we did it together. Every witness, every camera, every person who refused to look away. Outside the window, clouds drifted across a blue horizon. For the first time in days, Naomi let herself sit back and breathe. The world finally saw what we live through every day, she said softly. And now they cannot unsee it. Rachel asked, what comes next? Naomi looked beyond the skyline, voice low but certain. We keep going. The sky is not the limit, it is the classroom. And this time, everyone learns the same lesson. The city moved far below them, unaware that a new law and a new standard of equality had just taken flight. By evening, the story had traveled farther than any plane could fly. Across televisions, timelines, and boardrooms, Naomi Ellis's name became more than a headline. It became a turning point. News anchors repeated her closing words, professors dissected her poise, and millions of viewers replayed that moment on the tarmac when she refused to bow to ignorance. The same world that once doubted her now echoed her voice. In her office, the lights were low, the skyline burning gold beyond the windows. Rachel entered quietly, carrying a single printed letter. "It just came through," she said softly. "The president's office is inviting you to speak at the National Civil Aviation Summit next week." Naomi took the letter, scanning the words with a calm expression. "Not to celebrate," she murmured, "but to remind them that justice does not need applause to exist." Rachel smiled. "Still, it is history. You changed the air itself." Naomi looked out at the distant runways where planes lifted and disappeared into the sky.